Welcome, everyone, to this Talks at Google virtual event. My name is Dawn Reed, and I'm with the Health and Performance team at Google as a massage therapist. I also lead our Move and Breathe sessions and facilitate our team build mindset breaks. So, before we get started, I would like to let you know how happy I am that you are joining us here for Talks at Google. Also, so you know, the audience will be able to have some questions and answers with our guest at the end of the talk. So as you think of your questions throughout the conversation, please be sure to add them to the live chat on the right. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, Alexandra Elle. She is joining us to discuss her new book, How We Heal: Uncover Your Power and Set Yourself Free. How We Heal is a deeply practical, encouraging, and empowering guide to healing yourself and finding peace. Alex is a New York Times best-selling author, certified breathwork coach, and restorative writing teacher. And her work has been featured in so many locations: the New York Times, NPR, Good Morning America. She teaches workshops and leads retreats centered around writing and self-care. And you may have heard her on her podcast, Hey Girl, and she's got a new one out, This Morning Walk. So she lives in the Washington, D.C. area with her husband and her 3 daughters. Alexandra, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Talks at Google.
Hello, Dawn. It's so good to be here with you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's fall, and it's always nice to wear fall colors. So, and how are you today?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Well, this book is coming out at such a good time for a book on helping people with healing after the pandemic, which is still lingering, and dealing with lockdowns and various global issues. People are adjusting to new ways of being in the world. And many of us have been dealing with anxiety and loss. People really need something to help guide them as they navigate to a sense of wholeness and a new level of healing.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I wrote How We Heal. I mean, I'm also, I guess I want to start with, I'm a big believer in self-care being an act of community care and healing ourselves so that we can eventually heal each other. Because when we heal ourselves, I think that's what we do. We give ourselves permission to show up authentically. And also, it really creates this ripple effect when we choose our healing and our self-care practices. And so How We Heal is this collection of my personal stories, my personal teachings, some meditation work in there, journal work, conversation starters, and then there's some amazing women that I interviewed to share how they heal. So it's really coming together as this communal act of holding ourselves and holding each other.
That's wonderful. The women that you have interviewed in the book, I think it's really incredible. How did you choose who to invite and to bring into the book?
Well, I love every last one of the women in the book. There's 13 of them, ranging from Tabitha Brown to Glennon Doyle to Chriselle Lim, Nedra Tawwab, and a lot of these women are dear friends of mine. And so I picked them because not only are they amazing in their own fields of work, but I wanted to know how these amazing women, how these amazing folks really took care of themselves and healed and worked through their own healing. We have Dr. Tama Bryant is in this book. She's a psychiatrist and she's an amazing woman, and she's gone through her own trauma. And she shares so openly about healing through that and how that brought her to being a practitioner. And so it's just really interesting how we can heal through things and then it can bring us to where we are today in the best way. So I picked them because I love them. I'm inspired by them, and their stories are really remarkable.
That's incredible. I'm At the beginning of your book, you share a little bit of your story, your healing story. Would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about your story?
Oh, yeah. So my story in a nutshell I was a really sad kid. I grew up in a pretty tumultuous home, and I didn't have a voice. I didn't feel safe, seen, or supported. And so journaling and writing was really how I found comfort. I'm also an only child, so I did a lot of like emo, sad poetry and like little stories, and I would record them on a karaoke machine and like listen to them back, just trying to keep myself not bored. And then I went to therapy around 18, 19, 20, and I met this amazing woman named Dr. B. And she got me looking at my writing as a way to heal. So when I started writing to heal, that's when my life really transformed. Especially because I never thought that my words could bring me a sense of peace and calm and healing. And so it was not until young adulthood that I was really able to find my power and my voice. And it truly made a difference with just how I showed up in the world, not only for others, but for myself. Being affirming to myself, being realistic, but also still being kind, self-compassion, non-judgment, like practicing these things that I didn't know how to do before I met this amazing therapist. So in a nutshell, that's how I got here.
That's amazing. And that sense of the self-compassion sometimes can be the hardest to find.
Yeah, for sure. And it can be very kind of countercultural because we're not taught to hold ourselves in the same love and kindness that we hold others. And so a big part of my work is allowing folks to show up flawed and also encourage them to really lean into self-compassion and non-judgment, because in life we're going to get things wrong, we're going to fail, right? And we're going to have to start over. And there's nothing wrong with that. So releasing the shame and the guilt that comes along with that has been a big part of my work as well.
That's incredible. When did you start, or how did you start taking that gift that you received from Dr. B and start sharing it with others and helping others?
I started writing notes to myself, and I would literally title them Note to Self. They were like love notes. And I started sharing them online about 10 years ago, and only because a friend was like, people may need this. Stop hoarding your happiness. Like somebody might actually need to see this. Like you're not the only one going through it. And I shared, and I wasn't the only one going through it. And then I self-published my first book. I was 23, and I had no idea that it would lead me here. But that's really how it started, having someone nudge me into the direction of like, hey, show up. You never know who's going to need you. And that was community care in itself.
Yeah, what a good friend. Say, hey, put that out there. How has your writing evolved over time as you've worked more with helping people and helping them find their inner path?
I love that inner path. How has my writing evolved? Well, first of all, people still buy my first book, and it's so cringy. I'm like, oh my goodness. Wow, 23-year-old Alex. But also like super brave of me, to put myself out there in that way. My writing has changed and become just from a personal level. I mean, of course it's evolved with the language I use and all of that, but just on a personal level, I write what I mean. I write what I'm trying to say. So there's not a lot of overthinking that I do anymore when it comes to book writing and meditation writing. It's just like, write what you need to hear, what you need to feel, write what you want to feel. And in school, we definitely weren't taught that, and so unlearning what we were taught in English class was huge
Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
So I did take a peek at your Instagram, which you have over 1 million followers, which is amazing. And one of the things that I saw that you post is, I don't know who needs to read this today. Um, and you prefaced something you posted with that. And I thought that was wonderful because it fits in with what you were saying about your journey of how you started with that, where your friend said, put that out into the world. And uh, there was something that I read of yours that really touched me. And I'm going to read a little bit of it. I don't know who needs to read this today, but you can be the first in your lineage to heal and pass down healing to those around you. Um, and you can, and it goes on and it says you can rise. And that really, really resonated with me, because it's so much of our healing journeys is trying to, maybe our parents may not have had all the best resources, or, they did their best, but they had their own things that they were dealing with.
Yeah.
And so to be able to say, all right, this is, I'm going to heal myself, and then not continue that pattern.
Mhm.
And I know as a parent for myself, that was definitely something when my son was born, to make sure that I wasn't repeating that. And I know you're a parent. How has being a parent influenced your perspective on healing?
Ooh, in so many ways. Um, Raising my daughter, I often say that when I'm mothering my daughters, I have 3 daughters. I'm remothering myself,
Hmm.
and I am deeply committed to breaking cycles that are no longer in alignment with who I am. And we're never in alignment with who I was. And so it's this deep power of choice that makes me feel really good to say, I am choosing to do something different with my kids, and no one can stop me. I am choosing to love differently. I am choosing to heal differently. I am choosing to center joy in my life. And that can be really challenging when you don't have that, when you don't have anyone leading by example for you. And it can also be deeply brave and encouraging for us to make the choices, the new choices that we may not have seen. And that in itself is so powerful. It's like to choose to do something with intention. It's just, it's wonderful. And so that's what I've learned through motherhood. Like, the choice to heal is in my hands, and that is what I'm going to do. And I also am going to reparent my inner child so that I can show up as the best version of myself as my adult self.
I love that. I love that. And there's a part, another thing that I read that you did, which was really beautiful, where you wrote a note to your previous self, and it was so touching. It was, I love you and I forgive you for the choices that you made, because we've all made choices in the past that we maybe regret, or feel could have been, better choices made. And I thought that was so wonderful and caring and loving.
Thank you.
It's really beautiful. I'm curious, if I know you spoke about Dr. B. Who were some of your other early inspirations and influences when you're talking about the affirmations, for example? I don't know if you're familiar with Louise Hay. She's old school affirmations. Way back, she used to help a lot of, in the early days of the AIDS crisis, helping people, AIDS patients, and affirmations. And um, just wondering if you had some other inspirations as well.
I didn't. I just knew that Dr. B told me to be kind to myself. And I started using I am phrases, with, positive words behind them. And then as I got older, like in my mid 20s, I really started leaning into Dr. Maya Angelou's work. And it's so affirming to hear her speak and to read her books and to see, like, I'm not making this up. Like, this wow, like humans and women and folks before me set the groundwork for healing. And so it just, especially as someone who never saw the possibility of healing, reading authors like Iyanla Vanzant and Mary Oliver and Dr. Maya Angelou, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, the list goes on.
Yeah, I love the value in the valley.
Oh my gosh. And just like seeing that, wow, I may not have had someone in my home teaching me this, but I have books by these amazing, brilliant women teaching me that this is possible, that this healing is possible.
That's wonderful. Those are so amazing women and amazing people sharing their truths with us, which is so empowering. In terms of you lead a lot of workshops, right? And help guide people through. What have you learned from facilitating and helping other people through their healing journeys?
That we are so much more the same than different. I have taught folks from all different backgrounds, socioeconomic status, ages, races, and it's like we all want to be seen, feel safe, and be supported. That is the resounding messaging. I had this woman come to one of my weekend retreats. She was 84. And she came with her granddaughters and her daughter for her 84th birthday. And in class, like she was doing, I almost felt wrong being 33, like trying, like teaching and having this wise woman in class. But she affirmed me and was like, I've never experienced anything like this. I've never written a note to my younger self before.
Mm.
And she read her note to her younger self, this 84-year-old grandmother and mother. And all of us were just like, just soaking in her wisdom. And it was just beautiful. And she sticks with me because she, and so, like so many others, stands vulnerably in their truth and offers themselves, their experience, their wisdom to the collective. And it's just really wonderful that, you know, we're able to share that type of space together in this life. Like, it's just, I will never forget that experience with her.
That's amazing. As you were sharing that story, I just got the image of you almost being like a midwife, you know, helping people sort of rebirth into, you know, a wholer sense of who they are.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. So this book is amazing. I just love the way it's put together with all of the interviews and even some of the care that went into it. You can see on the binding on the side where there's the sharing from other people's knowledge and wisdom. There's a little different color on the pages.
Yeah.
So it was put together so thoughtfully, and it's organized into a 4-part framework. Can you share with us a little bit of how you developed that framework?
So actually, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I took from courses that I taught over the pandemic. And that's how I came up with my framework. Because I was like, I've already done all of this work. How can I kind of encapsulate it into this 4-part book so that it doesn't overwhelm people? And so I went back to all my courses, which there have been like 10, and I picked the topics that resonated with me the most and resonated with my students the most. And that's how I split everything up. So it was really, once I realized that, oh, I actually have done this already. Let me go back and look. That felt really good and easeful because I knew I didn't want it to be a chapter book. I knew that I wanted people to be able to pick it up anytime they wanted and flip to a section and see what they would get. So there's like starting from scratch, befriending your fear, reclaiming your power, and healing your heart. And then under each section is a subsection. And so it's digestible. And I really wanted it to feel easeful and comforting to people and not just like all this information in your face.
And you've definitely achieved that. As looking through it, I don't feel like, oh, I have to do this, then this, then this. I felt it was okay to maybe, look and read people's stories first and then go back. And I have to admit, though, sometimes looking at the exercises, I can't wait to go back and actually write, go through them and write. But sometimes I looked at that and I was like, whoa, I don't know if I can handle going there right now. And taking that leap. I mean, it's worth it. How do you help people to get the courage to step into that process?
Baby steps are still steps. That's what I tell folks. So even if your baby step is just reading the prompt, that's fine. Maybe one day you go back and you do one of the journaling questions. That's fine too. I want people to understand and know that this is your practice. This is your personal practice. You don't have to tackle it all at once. And I would actually encourage you not to. Like healing isn't to be rushed through. Inner reflection and introspection is not to be rushed through. Take your time. I mean, that's why I put it in book form so that people can go back when they're ready. I call those sections breathing room. So you can reflect on my stories and look at your own and take what you will. And when you're ready.
So, among the amazing people who are sharing their stories in the book, did you approach anybody who maybe wasn't ready to share their story with your readers?
So one of the women, Dr. Yaba Blay, who actually ended up saying yes, she's in the book, was hesitant at first. And she was hesitant because she shared with me that she wasn't sure who she was or what healing even looked like in her life. And when we sat down to do the interview, so I interviewed everyone and then I transcribed our conversation. And when we sat down and did the interview, she said that was the most healing thing. And when she reads back her chapter and read back her essay, she was like, that is healing. That is my healing right there. So that's really sacred.
It sounds like having somebody else to help reflect your story back to you so you can see it in that with the space, like you were saying, having some space to really get a sense of it.
Yeah. I mean, and that goes back to community care, like being each other's mirror, is major for me in my work, and making sure people know that they're not alone in what they're walking through. They may think they're alone, they may feel like they're alone, but they are not alone. And so when we allow ourselves to soften into that truth, I feel like healing happens a lot more easily. Not that it won't hurt or be a struggle, because we all know that it can be, but I think it allows us to center joy over the wound. So the healing as a possibility, and that in itself is joyful. So that's what I teach a lot of my students.
I love that, centering joy. That's I'm going to take that with me today for sure. I noticed with the interviews that there were a few key questions that seem to be part of the process for people. Would you mind answering some of those key questions? I jotted them down for our audience here today.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So some of this we may have already brushed over, but here's a chance to maybe go a little more in depth.
Okay.
So the question that you led with was, who are you and what do you do?
Oh my goodness. Who am I and what do I do? I am a lover. I'm a storyteller. I'm a healer. I'm a creative. I am a photographer. I'm a chef in my head. And what do I do? What do I do? I lead with curiosity. I create space for other people's stories. And I am a vessel for truth. So I'm a holder of truth. That's what I do.
That's beautiful. How does emotional rest refuel your healing?
Just gives me some breathing room.
It's a theme.
Yeah, it gives me some breathing room to not always have to be doing, have to be fixing, have to be healing. Gives me room to be in my joy, you know? And so I encourage people, like, you don't have to tackle everything today, you know? And so giving myself permission to like step away is how I rest emotionally, like just not having to figure out that thing right now. Everything isn't urgent is what I'm learning.
Yeah. There's that diagram of urgent, not urgent, important, not important.
Yeah.
So not everything is urgent.
Yep.
All right. One more question from your list of questions.
Okay.
What event during the pandemic prompted you to dive deeper into your healing?
An anxiety attack. And I had to find a new therapist and get on new medication for my anxiety. And I had been avoiding that. And I'm glad that I finally answered the call that my body and mind was trying to tell me. I'm sad that it took an anxiety attack, but, or not but, and the lesson there is name what you need and go get it.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes we need that, huge wake up call to follow through with something that we kind of knew all along.
Yeah.
So you've been definitely in the course of our conversation here and also in your book, you talk about compassion and connection. And you say compassion and connection are central to the work we're doing here. And I love that section where you shared the story about the, and I'm going to use quotation marks, mean lady. And I really appreciated how you continued to offer her that connection. And it eventually led to having a brief exchange because of that gentle offering.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, could you tell us more about that work of compassion and connection?
That was my favorite That's my favorite essay in How We Heal. And I've seen her. I just saw her in the first time in like 5 years the other day. It was very interesting.
And did you say hello?
I didn't say hello, but we saw each other, and it was that understanding. I don't want to give it away if you haven't read the book yet, but it was just like, I see you, and that was nice. Connection and compassion. I think that really, it has to start with ourselves. I think inner connection and self-compassion opens up pathways to be compassionate and caring and connected to other people. And that took me a really long time, especially when it came to folks who may have hurt me or wronged me in some way. Like that compassion muscle was weak, and choosing not to take things personally was also challenging, but that's really how I found deeper connection with myself and others. Like that thing is not about me. Sometimes it might have been, and that's, when I have my self-reflective moments. But when I know that it's not about me, how do I hold space for compassion and care and not allowing someone else's mood or energy, or inner turmoil to disrupt the peace that I've created in my space. And so it's a lot of like self check-ins. It's a lot of taking inventory and remembering that everybody is going through something. Everybody is going through something.
Yeah, that's so true. And it sounds like what you were saying is it's hard to have that compassion for others until you've been able to find that compassion for yourself first.
I think that the compassion we have for ourselves deepens the compassion we can have for others. Yeah.
That's great. You also describe healing as an ongoing process. What would you say to people who may get frustrated when they find themselves needing to address something that they've dealt with before and were perhaps hoping to just be over it?
Well, as I talk about in How We Heal, that healing is a forever love. It's a forever friend. And it's always there to teach us something, right? Be it what we need to heal from again. Like I wrote something not long ago about give yourself permission to heal from the same thing more than once. Because we're human, we have triggers. Some things will hurt us forever. I mean, I think about grief and like losing people and how that's always going to hurt and how we're going to have to self-soothe our way through that healing process. Not necessarily heal the wound, but soothe, tend to that pain. And so I think I think healing humbles us. I think being triggered teaches us. And we have to just be soft with ourselves. Like we're human. Like we have to release the idea that we have to be healed and better today or ever. Because sometimes like it doesn't happen. And that's something else I talk about in How We Heal. Like how do we hold ourselves through the moments where healing feels impossible? Or maybe when healing is not happening. Yeah.
That's so hard to do as well. And I've
Very hard.
someone once shared with me an image that I found really helpful because we tend to be so linear and we think, okay, here and then here we're going to be healed and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And the image of more of like a spiral, I found really comforting because as you come back to maybe that same thing that needs some healing work, you realize, but you're on another level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We're not starting with no experience. You know, we're starting with more experience. So then we have some more tools to lean into and explore. Yeah.
So I think we may have a question from our audience. So I'm thinking that it would be nice to see if we can invite some other people in the conversation here. We have, I don't know if you can see it on there, it's Katie. And Katie says, is there anything in the space you work in that you've changed your mind about in the last couple of years? Or conversely, found to be even more relevant than you previously believed?
That's a great question. Can you put that back up on the screen so I can reflect on it? Is there anything in this space? Yes. So to answer that first part, I've changed my mind about boundaries only being for other people. When I think about my personal boundaries or the boundaries in my life, it starts with me honoring them myself, like leading by example in that way. And I remember when I first started my healing path, and even when I was writing After the Rain, which came out in 2020, I was having a really hard time deciphering between boundaries and barriers. And I was speaking with one of my friends, and they were saying to look at, do I have a boundary in place? Is this boundary flexible? Is it helpful? Or do I have a barrier in place that nobody can get through, not even myself? And so I had to take inventory on what I thought a boundary was, because I didn't have boundaries. I had barriers. And so the reframe for me has been, boundaries are flexible, they shift and they change, and they must start with me. So for example, if I say I'm not answering the phone after 9 p.m. and I have someone who I love dearly calling me every night after 9 p.m. and I answered the phone, I'm not honoring my boundary, and it's not teaching them how to honor that 9 p.m. boundary, right? And so I had to start looking at things very literally, like, Alex, this isn't always about other people. It's also about you and how you show up and how you honor your boundaries that you set for yourself and those around you. And so that's really something that's shifted a lot. So before I say like someone is violating my boundaries, I check in and I'm like, Alex, are you honoring your own boundaries? And sometimes it's no. And I have to revisit.
Check in with those boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. When you said somebody calling you after your stated time, I have a family member that came to mind on that.
We all do, okay? We all do.
So true. So let's see, we don't have anybody else in with our question just yet, but I have some more questions for you, if that's okay. I'm curious just about your writing practice and a few questions about that. There's, I don't know if you heard of The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron, and the daily writing. And the idea with that was just as soon as you get up, you have 5 minutes of rush writing and you do that. And I'm curious what your practice is. Do you have a writing space? Do you have a certain time of day that you say you're going to sit down and this is what you're doing?
So my writing practice looks a lot like gratitude work. So I have a gratitude list that I add one thing to at the top of the morning and one thing to at the end of the day. And that is my writing practice for now, these days, because after writing books and teaching writing, it's just hard, if I'm being truly honest, to like sit down and write for myself. And so the gratitude list thing really makes me feel nourished. I also go on walks every day. So sometimes I'll voice note journal and just like talk myself through things and then listen back. And if there's something that comes up, I'll put it down on the pages of my journal. And then I also have an art journal where I just make a mess and do watercolor and abstract art, where I don't have to use words and I just paint. And then if the words come by the end, like an affirmation or a feeling, I'll write that down on the journal page with all the paint splatters and stuff. And that feels good. It feels doable, especially as a writer. Sometimes we run out of words and we have to find other ways to tap into our voice.
I love that. I love that, giving yourself permission. I used to, when I was younger, used to think that when I journaled, it had to be, like this amazing, diary. If you see famous people who've published their diaries, and it's full of wise understandings of things, and just that idea of, well, maybe a couple words of gratitude, or maybe I'll draw a picture instead. I love that freedom,
Yeah,
that space, creating that space.
that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. Um, do you hear from your, I formulated this question as, do you hear from your readers? But I think more appropriately it might be your community, the people who have found your books and gone to your workshops, and that how do you communicate? Do you have ongoing communication with folks?
I do. I answer emails. I try to answer DMs, and I love when people come to retreat with me, because then we really get that one-on-one in-person time. But yeah, the community is, I send out a newsletter once or twice a week with community questions, and I encourage people to respond to the email so I can see what their reflections are. And that's been really nourishing, like just to see what folks are going through, what they are softening into, how they're healing, how they're centering joy. It just really beautiful. So yes, we communicate, and I love it.
That's wonderful. And speaking of communicating, we have some questions ready from our friends in the audience.
Cool.
So if we could put up our next question, please. So Nicole Ashley, what are some short morning affirmations that could be placed on a wall to start off your day?
That's good. So some of mine, I have, I'm grounded, I am clear-minded, and I am open to change. I have those downstairs on my fridge. I am grounded, I am clear-minded, I am open to change.
I like that.
And
Grounded.
things can feel hard.
Yeah, yeah. Clear-minded and open. Oh, that's beautiful. We've got another question.
Yeah.
Let's see who's next. Svendana, any ideas for journaling prompts to understand how you're feeling, going deep and knowing what's bothering?
Yes, I mean, there's a bunch in how we heal. And something that too that I ask myself almost every day is, how are you feeling today? How are you? Even if I don't write it down, but writing it down is super powerful, because then we can list exactly how we are, and not in a performative way, not in, a self-judgmental way, but just like, how are you? How are you feeling? Where is it hurting? What's feeling good right now? And like, something else I tell folks is to start with a list, because listing just allows us to brain dump and find ease, or find that clarity and that groundedness, that openness that we were just talking about. And then you go back and you ask yourself, well, why do I feel this way? How do I feel this way? Where in my body do I feel this way? And this can be very uncomfortable, because we're not trained to tune in and check in with ourselves in this way. But after a while, it becomes second nature. And it's so beautiful to be able to know ourselves, or not even know ourselves, because sometimes we don't know ourselves, right? We feel far away from ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's this invitation to get closer, to get curious. So those back to basics, I think that's probably my biggest thing that I've learned especially during the height of the pandemic, is like, get back to basics. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be major, doesn't have to be big. It can be basic. And I think basic is good.
Yes. Well, that also brings to mind a body scan.
Yes.
If you really want to like dial it in and really focus on starting with each body part and going through and getting a sense of, well, how am I feeling? Because we so easily live up here and aren't in contact with the rest of us.
Yes. Yeah. So getting into our body. I actually wanted to read a journal prompt that I have in here. Do we have time?
Yes, please.
So there's a whole section in how we heal around inner child work. And so this journal prompt is centered on that. And it's called Inner Child Reflection. And it says, our inner child is our original or true self. It's also a hidden childlike part of our personality, characterized by playfulness, spontaneity, and creativity. When our inner child gets triggered, it can lead to anger, hurt, and fear that we don't understand, or that seems outsized compared to the actual trigger. These journal prompts will invite you to get curious about what your wants and needs look like as a child and what they look like now. So a few of those questions here are, what does your inner child need today? What made you feel safe and loved as a child when you were a child? What creative modalities were you into? What did you like to make? what would you change about your childhood? What would you keep the same? So these basic journal questions to get us up close and personal with our younger self and our current self, which I think not many of us do. So again, there's lots of invitations in how we heal with journal prompts and meditations and stories that I think could be really helpful, especially for folks who are new to writing practice.
Yeah, and those sound really like a good way to access. You often hear, oh, how is your inner child? What does your inner child need? But having those prompts to have something concrete to focus on would be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Well, I know we have some more folks in the chat who have some questions for you. So hopefully we'll get our next one in. Cynthia, is it possible to move forward without healing from the past? How can we heal from the past if the other party does not feel that any wrong was done?
Ooh.
Mm.
I was on Glennon Doyle's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things, this week, or last week, and I talked about this. So go listen to that episode. And yes, we can heal. Can I see that question again, please? Yes, it is possible. Here's something. Okay. I have stopped using the move forward. I have started using move through. How do I move through this thing without getting what I need, want, or feel like I'm worthy of? How do I move through this disappointment? How do I move through this pain? And I do think it's possible for us to move forward or move through without healing from the past. Again, I think that goes back to the tenderness, the self-soothing, okay, this thing might always hurt me, but how do I hold myself with compassion and grace and love while this thing is aching me? And when it comes to other people not feeling like they hurt us or that they've done anything wrong, that used to really get me going and get me fired up, because it'd be like, acknowledge me, acknowledge my pain, acknowledge what you did. However, that was keeping me more stuck than the acceptance of, this person feels how they feel, and my job is to let them feel that way. And that may require a lot of boundaries and a lot of adjusting, and also remembering that our work isn't to get other people to see our point of view. Our work is to stay grounded and rooted in the truth of what we know, to be true about ourselves and our life walk and our work. And that can be really challenging, especially if it's a parent. I know when it comes to parent stuff, I have a lot of that I've talked about in both this book and After the Rain. And it can be challenging when your caretaker or your parent doesn't acknowledge their wrongdoings, and it can make us feel really abandoned. And reminding ourselves that we are safe now, and that we can choose how we're deciding to move through our healing with or without their acceptances.
That's so powerful.
It's hard.
Yeah, but so powerful. We've got a few more people. Lots of folks want to ask you some questions. So let's get our next question up on the board, please. Nicole Ashley, do you believe in vision boards? If so, what is the most effective way to create one while tapping into our inner power?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so yes, there's a whole chapter in here too on this, on creating vision boards, on affirmations and all of that. And the kicker is, affirmations and vision boards without action are just words and pictures. And so it is absolutely beautiful for us to write affirmations, for us to create these vision boards. And it's also very important that we're working for it while we're waiting for it, and that we're doing our part. So what I mean by that, if you create a vision board and you have like a picture of a family on there, or a home, or something else tangible you may want, or maybe a closer connection with family, I don't know. There's so many different things. How I think the writing portion of that should be, how do I want to cultivate these relationships in my life? Who do I want to surround myself with? What things do I need to change or keep the same? What boundaries, blah, blah, blah. So it's like really thinking about more than just the vision, but also the action.
Yeah. The old saying, words without deeds, comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's get our next question up, because we have lots of folks who still have other questions. Gabby Roth, what advice do you have for those who are hesitant to share their art or lean into their creativity?
My advice, do it. My advice is do it, because we get one life, and self-doubt and hesitancy will keep us stuck in the places we say we're trying to get out of. And this world is like, we need creativity. We need it. And so baby steps are still steps. Make the thing. Make the thing do the thing. That's my advice.
I love that. I am so taking that with me. Baby steps are still steps. It's going to be one of my new mantras. It is wonderful. All right, let's get our next question, please. From M, any suggestions for how to help a family member when they tend to avoid issues that need to be dealt with? Because it seems like they would help them on many levels.
Something that I would say to this, and I've actually been grappling with this, is within my own personal space, is remembering that it's not my job to create change in other people's lives by trying to I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but my help can sometimes come off as a little like, I know this is good for you here, right? And then sometimes people are like, I don't want your help. I think I'm fine. I don't need therapy. I'm not doing that, right? Even though we know that it's like, you need this book, you need this therapist, like you need something, right?
I know I've emailed like meditations to people, and they may or may not have wanted them.
Exactly. And so something that I think is helpful when we have people in our lives who we want to help and hold space for, and we want to see, because we see the possibility in their growth, ask them, how can I support you in this? And they may say, I don't need support, or I'm fine. Your job isn't to overdo it or overtalk it. What I find is the most helpful is us healing and leading by example. People bear witness to us. And something that is really powerful is I've had people like my mother, for example, say that my healing has inspired her healing, which is, if you knew my mother, is like,
wow,
earth shattering. Okay. And so I think my biggest piece of advice was keep leading by example and keep healing by example. Yes, ask if they need support if you feel called to, but also you don't have to be the fixer. And I think a lot of us feel like we have to be the fixer.
Yeah, that sense of responsibility.
It's huge. Yeah.
Well, we have time for one more question.
Okay.
So let's see. Devyani, not each day is as eventful, successful, achievement worthy to feel happy about. How to feel happy or contented each day?
I think our aliveness is enough to feel happy about. That's what I think. And I know some days it feels hard to even be alive. And it's a celebration, I think, for us to still be here through everything we've walked through in this life.
Yeah.
That's how I stay content, remembering that my aliveness is enough.
Would you say that a gratitude practice helps with that too, or?
I think my gratitude practice woke me up to that truth. I read this book called Wake Up Grateful by Christy Nelson that really shifted how I looked at gratitude and gratefulness. And she has distinguishing factors between the two. And I had no idea that gratitude was not the same as gratefulness. And gratefulness is this act of just being enough for being alive, you know? And that's something that I walk through. And I look at, like, sometimes getting out of bed is what all I can be grateful for the day. And that too is okay.
I love that. And that distinction between gratitude and gratefulness. What was that author's name?
Christy Nelson.
Christy Nelson. I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yep. It's called Wake Up Grateful. Great book.
Wake Up Grateful. That's beautiful. This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us and coming out here. I definitely recommend the book to anybody who wants to further their healing. I know that I took a quick read of it this week, and I'm really looking forward to going in and taking a deep dive and doing some of the journaling. And I know in the book you say reach out to your friends. So I'll see if I can encourage some friends to go through the process with me, maybe without overstepping their boundaries. See if we can do that. Yes. And for anybody here who wants to, you can connect with Alex on social media. She has a huge Instagram following. You can find her on Twitter and YouTube, and her website is alexelle.com. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alex, for joining us. So very happy to have you here at Talks at Google.
Thank y'all for having me. And this is how we heal. Go get it.
Yay, get your book.